Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a super fascinating look at the evolutionary journey of business legal structures. Whether you're just sketching out a startup idea on a napkin, maybe you're already running a side hustle, or you're just genuinely curious about how massive corporations actually work behind the scenes. Well, we are going to decode the exact legal structures that can literally make or break a company. Let's get into it. But right before we get into the weeds, I want you to ask yourself a very serious, high-stakes question. What actually happens to your personal bank account if your business fails? It's kind of a scary thought, right? This brings up the absolute most critical concept we're going to talk about today, financial liability. We're hitting this long before we even get to the dictionary definitions, because how you structure your business entirely determines whether your own personal savings are on the chopping block if things end up going south. Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We're going to scale up from the absolute simplest structure to the most complex. First, we'll hit the foundation of ownership, then going solo as a sole trader. Next, teaming up in partnerships. From there, we'll build some protective walls with private limited companies, go absolutely massive with public limited companies, and finally, check out the franchise alternative. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the foundation of ownership. Here's the thing, every single entrepreneur has to think incredibly carefully about how they set up this foundation right from day one, because it dictates literally the entire future of the operation. The legal structure you pick is going to influence your business throughout its whole existence in three really critical areas. Number one, your financial liability if things go wrong. Number two, how the business legally pays its tax. And number three, the way day-to-day management decisions are actually made. You just can't escape these three pillars. Moving on to Section 2, going solo. Sole traders. Think about your local plumber, maybe a freelance photographer or a hairdresser. A sole trader is a business owned and completely controlled by just one person. Now, what's really wild is just how overwhelmingly popular this model is. If we look at the UK private sector business population back in 2019, a staggering 59% were sole traders. That translates to roughly 3.5 million registered sole traders completely dominating the sector. It's the absolute go-to starting point for the vast majority of entrepreneurs, even if they plan on hiring employees down the line. But here's the massive catch. And this brings us right back to that opening question about your personal bank account. As a sole trader, you have unlimited liability. Legally speaking, there is absolutely no separate business entity. There's zero distinction between your personal assets and the business's liabilities. You literally are the business. So what does that mean? It means if the business racks up debt, you are personally on the hook to pay for those losses right out of your own pocket. Yikes. So it really comes down to weighing the ultimate freedom against that heavy, heavy burden. On the pro side, it's incredibly easy to set up with super low startup costs. You get total freedom to make all the decisions, and best of all, you get to keep 100% of the profits. But the cons, man, aside from that terrifying unlimited liability we just talked about, it can be an incredibly lonely journey. You're wearing every single hat, marketing, bookkeeping, admin, while usually pulling some insanely long hours just to keep the lights on. All right, on to Section 3, teaming up, partnerships. Now, if wearing all those hats as a sole trader sounds like a bit much, this is the next natural step in our evolutionary journey. This is where skilled professionals like dentists, tradespeople, or solicitors decide to share the load and legally own a business together. But listen, while you gain a partner to help run things, you still carry that unlimited liability. Because of that shared risk, having a solid partnership agreement is absolutely essential for your survival. This key legal document, signed by everyone involved, maps out exactly how management decisions are going to be made and precisely how the profits will be shared. It is basically your ultimate rulebook. Don't skip it. When we break down the pros and cons here, it's pretty clear. You get the brilliant advantage of shared expertise and capital. You definitely get greater borrowing power because there are more people to share the debt, and teamwork can seriously reduce those grueling working hours. However, the really dangerous drawback is that one partner's bad actions can negatively impact absolutely everyone involved. Disagreements over key decisions, or even just tension if one partner feels they're working way harder than the other, can completely poison the well. And of course, at the end of the day, you do have to share those profits. Moving right along to Section 4, private limited companies. Let's shift gears to a totally different structure commonly known as LTDs. This is where we finally build a protective corporate wall around the owners. The most crucial point here is this brand new concept, the separate legal entity. The business is now an incorporated company, so in the eyes of the law, the company is its own person, entirely separating its debts from the personal assets of the shareholders. If the business suffers financial hardship, your personal house and your personal savings are finally safe. What a relief, right? So private limited companies are owned by shareholders, typically the directors, and shares cannot be offered to the general public. Now, you might be wondering, why artificially limit your growth by staying private? Well, just look at absolute giants like Mars Inc. and Dyson. They have massive global footprints, but they actively choose not to go public. They do this to ensure they retain their core family values and maintain total, uncompromised control over their business operations. Looking at the pros and cons of an LTD, limited liability is obviously the huge winner here, along with the fact that it's a much more tax-efficient model than being a sole trader. But there's always a trade-off, and here it's intense paperwork. Because the money legally belongs to the company, getting paid yourself actually gets kind of complicated. You have to officially transfer money via a salary or dividends. You're also looking at increased admin and legal costs, and you're actually forced to publicly disclose key financial information that you might have preferred to just keep quiet. Next up, Section 5, Public Limited Companies. Now we're stepping into the ring with the absolute heavyweights. Public Limited Companies, or PLCs, are the highly prestigious giants of the business world. Though, fun fact, they actually only make up about 5% of all limited companies in the UK. So how does a private company make that leap to a PLC? Through a process called flotation. This is where a private company decides to go public, offering shares to the general public via the stock exchange. Going public completely opens the floodgates for investment from investment banks, pension funds, and wealthy individuals, generating just massive amounts of additional capital. To really understand the sheer scale of what's possible here, just look at this number, $28 billion. When Snap Inc., the company behind Snapchat, went public via flotation back in 2017, their stock soared 44% on the very first day of trading. That valued the company at an unbelievable $28 billion. Even though the tech enterprise was technically making a loss on paper at the time, that single day of trading propelled its co-founders into the top tier of global tech billionaires. Crazy, right? But checking out the pros and cons of a PLC shows that you really have to be careful what you wish for. Yes, it's a fantastic way to generate massive capital while keeping that precious limited liability. However, the ultimate risk of scaling this high is that the original owners can completely lose control. If a majority of shareholders agree to a bid, your company can be taken over. You could literally lose the very business you built from the ground up. Add to that the absolute mountain of legal requirements and paperwork, and you can see exactly why it's not for everyone. And finally, Section 6, the franchise alternative. Let's look at a plug-and-play alternative for those of you who just don't want to build a brand from scratch. This structure clearly defines a unique two-way street between the franchisee and the franchisor. The franchisee, that would be you, purchases the rights, pays an initial fee, and commits to ongoing royalties. In return, the franchisor, who owns the trademark, hands you a proven, guaranteed business model. Think about McDonald's and Ray Kroc's story. You acquire their exact brand, store layouts, technology, and products, practically guaranteeing customers from day one. Summarizing the pros and cons of franchising, you really get some incredible benefits. A proven system that completely minimizes startup problems, massive economies of scale for purchasing supplies, and built-in national advertising. But you absolutely trade away your freedom. You face strict monitoring from the franchisor, those ongoing royalties can be very costly, and you basically have zero creative freedom. If you want to alter the business or try something totally new, the franchisor will very likely reject it because it just doesn't fit their traditional proven model. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today, and I want to leave you with the final, really vital question. Which legal structure would you choose for your dream business? Do you crave the ultimate freedom of a sole trader, even with that unlimited risk hanging over your head? Would you team up or build the protective walls of a limited company? Or maybe you'd buy into the proven certainty of a franchise. Honestly, it all comes down to balancing your personal appetite for risk against your desire for control and growth. Think on that, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.